issue with drinking I find with my students, and why I always say no to it for the guys that are kind of still learning, is that anything that you learn about that night, if you're intoxicated, it doesn't really sink in as much or as well, you know. Whereas if I'm kind of really lucid and I'm not drinking, then all the little nuances of the interaction, and sometimes some of these things don't hit me till the next day, when I'm looking back and I think, oh, she did this, and that's what that meant, you know. All that kind of stuff, I can really be present to that. So, it's a personal thing though. Some guys actually do better at it, you know, and they're probably not, they're best to not analyse it.
Always do the same thing.
Yeah.
Fuck, it happened last time.
Yeah, right. So you mean as in like not learning from
my mistakes?
Yeah,
frankly.
Right. Okay. Because I mean, in the moment, do you find that you can think about things when you're in interaction?
No, I cannot.
Yeah. Okay. Because I noticed that because we did a session like a good month ago or something. That's actually a good sign. If you can't really think about stuff while you're in the interaction, that's a good sign. It means that you're to an extent you're present. You know. Because if you could really actively think about stuff while you're talking to someone, then you're kind of not there. You know, you miss out on some cues. But I guess the issue with that is that's where a great wing comes in, because they can point stuff out to you, you know, and be really kind of kicking your ass if there's certain things that you're always doing that you shouldn't be. That's another topic that I'm going to say for another week, but this idea of finding the right wing, you know, that for me was almost one of the most important things I learned apart from calibrating the moment, which we discussed outside. So this idea of finding the right wing just catapulted my game to a new level. And that was really just, and it took me a good while, like almost a year to find a decent wing.
I went through 10 wings before I found one.
Yeah, that you can actually kind of
It takes 10 to get one.
I mean, once I actually found two, they're now my best friends, right? And so we go out all the time. But once we found each other, it was incredible. It was like dynamite. Because we're all on the same path, and we're really kind of determined, right? So if I say, look, I don't want to do this tonight, like I don't want to be the chode tonight, or I want to be the guy that sexually escalates tonight, they'll hold me to it, you know? Okay. That's essentially the way to fix what you're talking about from my experience. Because, you know, if you are doing it right, you can't think about that stuff.
I find that if I just go on in the moment and I don't think about it, I don't learn anything. Yeah. Maybe I'll have a great night.
Yeah.
But I don't learn anything.
But you don't push the boundaries, right?
Here I'm trying to get to a point where I'm learning stuff.
Yeah.
Not to be at the same state.
I totally get it. Look, great example, okay? So I had a girl up in my room like last week, and I was really in the moment, we were kind of making out and it was going well, okay? But I did exactly what you just described. So I got like too caught up in the moment and having a good time, and I didn't actually push the interaction further. Yeah. I should have pulled her into my bedroom, but because it was all going so well, we had great chemistry and stuff, I was in my head. It literally didn't even pop up, you know? It just didn't occur to me. And then the next day, I was just sitting there going, okay, why didn't that go any further? And then I was just, I'm such an idiot. It's because I didn't actually grab her and take her into the room, you know. Because girls, for the most part, are not going to do that, right? It's up to you to kind of lead that. And this is where, again, like good wings really come into play, you know. Yeah. Like I got my ass kicked for that the next day, because it's just such a fundamental thing. But I totally get what you mean. You're just so in the moment. But yeah, I mean, but the whole idea of like not caring what they think, that's interesting, because that comes back, for me, it comes back to the process. So you've got to follow that process of getting to the point where you get into that mind state, you know? And like, for me, it's like, we will be going out tonight, for example, right? So the first 20 minutes, we just approach everything we can and make sure that we get into that zone. And the thing is, like, for guys that haven't done that a lot, it's very, it's an uneasy thing to do. It's nerve-wracking, right? But the more you do it, the quicker, the less approaches it takes you to get into the zone, you know? And if you go out consistently, it's almost like you're always in the zone, you know? You get a momentum and you're just always there. And that's why with my students, I always encourage them to go out as much as possible, you know, around their schedules, like work and stuff. But the more you go out, the less work it takes for you to get into that zone, you know? And then the longer you're in that great zone for the rest of that night.
I mean, so like 20 minutes of approaches, like how many approaches you do?
Well, for me, it's like, it depends, because like as you get better at this, your interactions get longer, right? But for when I was starting out, like the first half an hour, you want to hit up at least 6 or 7 sets. Especially if you approach and it doesn't go well, or if they walk away, that's your opportunity to approach something else, you know? My situation now is a bit skewed, especially my wing, who's really good at this. Like, he's really good at the day and night stuff. So when he approaches in interactions, his interactions are at least 10-15 minutes sometimes. You know, so it's a different story. He's still building momentum. He just does it over less sets because he can. But you know, if you're finding like in the first half an hour that you're getting blown out consistently, or if they're just not hooking, that's actually an opportunity for you to go and approach someone else. You know, and I guess the where you fall down is you approach 1 or 2 sets, it doesn't go well, and you make it mean something. You make it mean that I'm not good at this, or that I did this wrong or that wrong. I really find that none of that really matters. It's just you just follow the process. That's why I love Tyler from RSD. I don't know if you guys are familiar, but he talks about this all the time. You know, he's been doing this for almost 11 years now, and he still does the same thing. He'll start his night where he just goes and approaches one girl and the next girl or a group of girls or whatever, and by the fourth or fifth set, he's good to go. You know, and I find even with myself, I'm very guilty of this as well. You know, like the first couple of approaches doesn't go well, and then you kind of start to make it mean something. You know, it's just a training at the beginning.
So you just approach whatever.
Yeah. I mean, look, for me, when it comes to night game, I really love night game because it's very social. It's not just about pickup, it's about meeting new people as well. So for me, I can quite easily approach any set in a club because I can approach them and kind of have the mind frame of I just want to meet new cool people. Maybe I work in media, right? So I can quite easily approach people who work in media in Shoreditch and maybe get a job, you know, or maybe just meet some new cool people that are having a house party next week and they invite me. Or I can go and approach with the mindset of I want to pick a girl, or at least try to. So for me, the night game stuff and approaching anyone is very normal now. You know, yeah. What's great, it's interesting about you're saying like sometimes girls start like fucking around on their phone and stuff like that. A great one that I found to kind of break that is just go for the handshake if you haven't already.
Okay. And
there's an interesting little window that pops up. I don't know if we did that together, maybe not with another student, where if they're texting, like the conversation dies and they make up some bullshit about how they have to text someone. If you go in for the handshake and say, look, I've got to go, but my name's Darren, it was nice to meet you. You put your hand out, it breaks their focus for a little bit and you get the eye contact back, usually, not always. But if you do that, then a small window of opportunity opens up where you can throw out a line and try and hook her attention again. So I'll usually do something like, hi, my name's Darren, I need to go, and she'll go for the handshake. And then I'll just do something about the handshake. Just make a really controversial, random statement like, "Oh, you've got really rough fingers. Like, what do you do? You know, just like some bullshit like that, right?" It's basically an old school neg. But the idea is to just break that focus on the phone, you know. And it's a really great way to recover sets, you know. Yeah. So you just pump them with a bit of attraction stuff when that window opens up. Yeah. And 9 times out of 10, the phone goes back in the pocket. You know, if you take that window and you do hit them with proper attraction material. But I mean, sometimes it's hard. If you can't come up with something that's controversial, then you kind of lose it again. But it's a great way to try to turn it around, you know, before just leaving.
Yeah, I'm sure. Just to comment on that, you were talking about it during our session.
Yeah.
The first time the girl is giving me crap, I think you should stay.
Yeah.
Like, I used to do that all the time. Like, she was saying, oh, I have to see my friend, I would just eject. Yeah. But no, I just said, oh, just 5 minutes. I just want to tell you that. Yeah. And then generally they stay and you can flip that around. And some of the guy at the Saturday research was saying that's just kind of a test she's doing to see if you're really interested.
Yeah,
so you should just, the first one, I would just say, no, sorry, it's 5 minutes, I need to tell you that, I just want to talk to you about that. And and you just stay just 5 minutes. I think it works, and it's an advice you gave me. In fact. I think it's a good one.
Yeah, I think, and you get better at it as well. That's the other thing. It definitely works, but it's something that you need to work at. So like when you create those windows, you know, to pull her back, you get better at like knowing what to say to keep her there. You know. So like for me, like in nightclubs, for example, like, you know, if a girl turns her back to me after her approach once, the way I create the window is basically by, you can be a bit more dominant and go to the middle of the group if you want, but just say something like really controversial, you know, and they turn back to you, and you get that like almost like 3 to 4 second window to say something, and then from there I'll just go really sexual, you know, and then they start to open up a little bit. Not always. Sometimes they're just not interested and you just walk away.
You told me also to be honest.
Yeah.
And what I do sometimes, like last time it happened to me. Like I was talking to those 2 girls, and one was turning her back on me and showing like a dress to a friend. I said, why are you doing that? Just don't be rude. Yeah. Look at me when I'm talking to you, and she's just like, I don't know why they work so well. They're just like, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to be. They're always like that. If you say don't be rude, they will always be like apological, and like, oh, I'm so sorry, and then you can.
You got that window again, right?
You get that small window, then you need to be good, but
it's I've definitely found that, especially if you use tone, right? You know, so there's a difference between saying like, hey, you know, when it goes up a little bit, just hey. You know, using that tone to like break the.
Yes, I do that. Sometimes I go hi at the end. At least I'm aware I'm doing it.
Yeah. But that's another way to kind of break that whole phone thing that they do, or if they turn their back. Just go into this kind of like almost teacher mode, like principal mode. Hey, I'm not finished with you yet. Something like that is perfect. Because what they do is they go, oh god, okay, and they turn back, you know, because nobody does that. Yeah. Nobody assumes authority or value, you know.
It's not easy to do, but...
Well, this is the thing. If you just do it a couple of times and you start to realize that it works. It's not easy the first couple of times, because the first couple of times you feel like you're being rude, and in actual fact you are. But being rude is not a bad thing, you know. Not in game anyway. Maybe at work and stuff or family, you know, that's a different story. But in game, sometimes being rude actually kind of can turn sets around. Now the last point I want to make is something that really got cemented for me about 3 months ago. It's this idea of girls, especially the hot ones, or the ones that I find attractive anyway, they need to reject you at least once. Like, I've never had a decent kind of interaction with a girl that went anywhere that said yes to me straight up. And I started to, once I kind of got that epiphany, I started to kind of read up on it, the psychology and stuff. I mean, women are always looking for how they look to other people, especially in clubs. I mean, in day game it can be slightly different, but especially in night game, they're always trying to assess how they look to other people, you know. So...
You mean physically? No?
Everything, socially, physically, whatever, right? So a good example is, say if I'm in a club right now, there's a group of girls there and I go and approach, and say if I'm really direct on one of the girls, right, while the other girls are there kind of watching, listening. If she kind of gives me too many green lights up front, she looks quite bad to her girlfriends, basically. And I've interviewed girls about this, I've discussed it with them, and it's fascinating. They do actually think this. That like, if you go up and do that and you say yes immediately, the other girl's going to think she's a slut, or she's too easy, or she's just like way too up for it. And once I started to internalize that, I just realized that every time you go up and you get what I guess most guys would call rejected, it's a given. Of course she's going to reject you. She has to. She lives in a social world with these kind of social rules that women have, where they have to say no. High value people always say no, you know. And what you'll notice is when you actually talk to people, just in your day-to-day lives, if you ask them a straight-out question, nobody ever says no. Most people don't say no because it's considered rude. It's not the right thing to do. You know, they usually give excuses. You know, so a great example is if you go onto the street to the charity guys, you know, that come up and ask you for money. So they'll go, do you have a minute, or do you want to donate? Right? Most people never say no. They just give an excuse. I'm off to a meeting, I'm late, something like that. You know, but you'll notice high-value people, including high-value women, will say no. You know, because firstly, they're not afraid of doing it. Secondly, they know that their time and themselves are valuable, and they can't just be whoring themselves out to anyone that comes up. Once I started to get that, I started to realize that every time a girl says no, it basically just means not yet. She's not ready yet. She has to say no at the beginning. You know, and I found this consistently with the hot girls. You know, so when I went to Aura in Mayfair, you know, there was no girls lower than a 9 there. Like, they were all 9 plus. And there was heaps of them. There must be at least 50 of them there. So you go up and you open these girls, and most of them reject you at first, especially if they're in a group. What's really interesting is you'll get rejected in groups a lot more than singles.
How do they reject you?
The harshest one I got was literally body language. So if there's 2 girls just like this, kind of facing inwards.
You shouldn't approach some 2 girls facing inwards.
Yeah, no, but the kind of stuff that I do, I'm trying everything.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not going for what's right.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So if there's 2 girls like this facing inwards, right, and you can't go in and you have a chat to them, like in this particular instance, I went in like this. The first girl kind of looks over her shoulder. I'm not even halfway through my opener, and then she turns back, right? And that's pretty harsh because everyone's like looking. We're on the VIP level on the top floor, and so in my head, my brain kicks in. I'm like, okay. Firstly, the internal dialogue is like, okay, she rejected me. Everyone saw me. This is really awkward. Should I stay in the set? Should I walk away? But then the game part of my head's like, well, she's going to have to because she's a fucking model. There's 2 models standing here. They've got the pick of any dude there. Why would you say yes to you, especially up front? So I said, fuck it. So I just kind of keep plowing. So I did the whole like honesty kind of honesty slash like trying to get their attention back thing, you know. So I just fired off some random line like it's just one of those stupid lines. Oh, I saw your friend. Sorry, I saw someone over there with the exact same dress as you, right? And it's just an old school kind of mystery opener. Yeah, basically. And so I did that, and then they kind of turned to me and they're like, "Well, what do you mean?" And they start to freak out, because it's a high-end club. Like they don't want to be seen wearing the same dress as someone else. And so I said that, and from there they just blow open, because they're like, "Oh, where is she? Where is she?" I was like, "I think she's outside." And then from there, just transition to something else, and then move on, you know. But that was really interesting, going to a place like Mayfair and trying that stuff out, you know, because you see all these patterns with hot girls, you know, the kind of stuff that they do. And so I remember there was like one 7.5 kind of girl floating around, and it was interesting. I went super direct on her in front of her friends. Like I just grabbed her and started whispering stuff in her ear, and she just blew wide open, you know. And I was like, oh, it's interesting. And then I went to another set that was again there's a Swedish group, and they were all like really hot, and they were all hanging around in the corner together. Again, you go in and approach, and you get shut down immediately. You get totally shut down. But then you go in with like you just kind of go again with a bit more energy and some kind of gamey stuff. They just blew over, and you just keep going. So say something, if you get something like I've got a boyfriend. It's the exact same principle applies. So you just want to run some like, controversial attraction stuff on her. So for me, the way that I turn that around is, yeah, me too. And I just do it with a smile. And she's obviously not expecting that. It's attractive because she's trying to throw me off what I'm trying to do, and she hasn't. I've just thrown it right back at her. And again, the same thing happens. So you throw something like that back at her, there's a small window of opportunity for you to then take the interaction somewhere else. That's essentially what happens. So like the handshake thing on the phone, you go for the handshake, she looks up, you get a second or two of eye contact. Sometimes it's less if they're hotter. You get a small window, and she's basically telling you, okay, I'm going to give you a chance, what have you got? And that's your opportunity to take that interaction and take it somewhere else. Like really move it in a different direction, you know? That's the way they deal with the rejection on the trip. But the concepts are exactly the same. You're going to get rejected. A lot of hot girls have boyfriends, and they're not afraid of saying it. And the ones that don't usually say it anyway, just to see how you're going to react, you know? And you just apply the same kind of concept to that. And just a lot of practice, you know? Because I find that's one of the most consistent things that will get guys out of that rut of what to say. Essentially, I don't know what to say is a lack of responsibility for the interaction. So if you go into a set, for me, I just autopilot now that I assume I need to take responsibility for that interaction and what's being said. So I'm not relying on her to come back with material. Because especially for the hot ones, I find that sometimes they just need a bit more of your personality and a bit of comfort before they can open up and start responding to you. So I just go in and assume that I have to talk for 10 minutes without stopping.
Okay, and on that, how do you get her to involve? Imagine you have 10-minute talk. I think
a 10-minute talk.
So I imagine, like you said, you take the topic, you think about it, you're like, okay, what can I do? I can talk about it.
Yeah.
Now, how do you get her to get involved in interaction? Because you can talk for 40 minutes.
Yeah, you can if you want. Now the thing is that usually, if you do it properly, so that is you talk with like emotion, you use things like tonality, volume, and you combine that with keynote, they start to respond. They actually start to respond.
At what point do you have like a real conversation, not like you talk 90% and she talk 10%?
When does that happen?
Yeah.
Well, that happens when you start to get good at talking about yourself. So I found now that I'm quite good at talking about what I'm interested in, what I like and don't like, and I found that I can talk about that stuff in an emotional, interesting way. And so if she needs a bit more comfort, and I've just approached, I can just talk about that kind of stuff for 5 to 10 minutes. You know, that means rare, but sometimes you do. And then she eventually starts to go, okay, well, she starts to make decisions in her head like, okay, this guy's normal, he's kind of interesting, let's find out more about him. And then that's when she starts to kind of invest. Okay. But this is the thing, it takes some time to do that, you know. And you can do that once you get into state. But if you never kind of get there, then you just kind of, you know, clutching your straws, you know.